everybody. Welcome back to the Popcorn Square. We're on episode 11. This is the Gauntlet, the Battle of Streaming. Dun dun.
Boom, boom. Yep.
I'm here. I'm Buttons, and I'm here, of course, with my co-hosts
Neff
and Kage.
All right, and just to launch right into this, what we're going to be talking about today is just the different streaming platforms that are out here and how all of this great wide options that are out there, you know, how are they competing and what are they offering us and for what price? So I have some numbers written down, but before we get into that, I'm just going to let everybody tell our audience, listeners out there, which streaming services we have. For me, I do have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Paramount Plus, and that's it for me. Neff?
I've got Paramount, HBO Max, which is now Max, Netflix, Hulu. Those are the only ones I have. I'm pretty happy with that selection. It has everything that I want to see, typically. And it's, you know, there's a plethora, literally, of streaming services, and I feel like there's more and more coming out. I'm not going to say every day, that's an exaggeration, but at least every year there's something new popping up. I know Roku has some stuff. Apple TV's been around with some stuff like Monarch, the show they got. What do you got, Kage?
Well, I was just going to say real quick, I did some research. There are over 200 streaming services and more coming out. So just something to think about.
Wow.
So we are touching on a very small amount, you know, and not to say that's bad or anything, because at the end of the day, it's content, you know. But for me personally, not in any order. Well, you know what? Screw it. On order. Yeah. Max is my number one. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and on occasion I do dabble in Crunchyroll for all you anime fans out there. That is a anime streaming services. So they have stuff on there, subtitles or dubs, or if you're super hardcore, Japanese. Good for you if you can do that. But respect. But yeah, those are mine.
Right. And Kage, something that you did touch on with the streaming services that we do have is the fact that there are so many out there, but they're very niche, I feel. The ones that I have written down as far as probably the top tier level, you know, most people have heard of them. Most people have at least one of them. Those are going to be Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Apple TV, AMC, plus Paramount. Crunchyroll was on my list as well, Amazon Prime, and Peacock. Now, all of these, again, are paid subscription. There are some subscription services out there that are free. Of course, they do have ads. And I will say that doing my research on the pricing on these different streaming services, we ran into, you know, a lot more of these offering the regular ad-free subscription, which is usually substantially more, and then a service with ads. So you're still able to get that content, you're still able to enjoy these streaming platforms, but you're going to have those ads just like back in the day for all of us dinosaurs that only had cable or regular, you know, TV. You had to sit through those ads. And, you know, one of the greatest things, in my opinion, with streaming platforms is the fact that when you were first introduced to this whole great, wonderful thing, it was like, oh, look at all this content that I have. And you mean I don't have to watch ads in order to enjoy it? That was like the greatest thing ever when Netflix first introduced, and I had Netflix right at the beginning when it became available, and they didn't have original content. And I will go ahead and segue that into talking about what we do see out here on these different platforms as far as original content. And Neff, I'll let you start with it. What is your favorite original content that you're seeing across these platforms?
Well, I think the one that actually puts out the most original content has to be Netflix. Now you see Max, but they're in cahoots with Warner Brothers, so they're just getting movies that are already out. You don't really see so much Max with original shows. I know Warrior was one that Kage is big on, and I know they're going to do a Penguin show that's based off the new Batman world that they got going on with Pattinson and stuff like that. But I don't see too much original content coming out of Max. I know Hulu has Hulu Originals. That's more movie-based as well. And then we have, what was the last one there? Paramount is the same as Max, basically. They're taking stuff from either movies that already came out in theater or it's a Viacom deal. So they're taking things that are from Viacom, MTV, Nickelodeon, stuff like that. So they just have a big selection based off that. But if I have to say who has the best original content, it's probably Netflix because they focus more on original content. I would say in comparison to the other streaming platforms. I know Amazon does some original things as well, but like I said, when it comes to who's putting out the most original content, it's gonna have to be Netflix, in my opinion. Kage, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm very glad you said that. I agree 100%. Netflix is killing it in terms of original series, original content. Out of all of my, like for me, I kind of wrote down a blur about the main four, excluding Crunchyroll. I'd say Max kind of has more serious stories, more very cinematic, very deeply cinematic. Netflix has, I'm sorry, this might upset some people, disposable stories. And what I mean by that is their one and done season. They love doing that. I'd say, I can't speak. What do you guys think for your streaming services? Netflix is very big on, let's have a season and done. We're going to kill it. We're going to make another one season show, done. They're like the biggest, I don't know, culprits is the right word. It's like, Netflix, stop doing that. You make great stories, but let them live.
So, Kage, you bring up a good point about Netflix putting out a lot of original content, but that these are very short-lived shows. And I would compare them, I guess the closest comparison would be Fox. Because Fox has that reputation of putting a lot of content out there and hoping that they're going to get a hit just to turn around and see most of their content or their new shows and that fail within a season or two. Netflix is, when they first started releasing original content, I feel like they started out a little slow, maybe the first year, just put out a couple things that went under the radar, and they maybe had one or two successful shows, and they said, hey, we can run with this, but what we have to do is throw a ton of content out there. And I'm talking about, I believe when I looked it up, I saw something in the realm of, several billions of dollars that they spent over the last probably 5 years on original content. And what that did was flood their streaming service. And that was great for the people who were Netflix subscribers already, because they had this huge library of material. And of course, Netflix's whole reasoning for doing this was the fact that they were looking at, well, I have to pay these studios that own this material if I want to stream Friends off of my platform to get subscribers, I'm having to pay the studio in order to use their content. I'm having to pay copyright, basically, on that. And so by creating their own content out there, they're like, hey, we own the rights to this, and we never have to pay anybody to stream it. And I think that was the biggest push for them, as far as launching their own original content. I will say Hulu, Disney Plus, Apple TV, they all have their original content. I will say that Prime tends to look more to the movies. Disney, of course, is using their whole catalog and all the things they bought up in the last several years as far as Marvel and Pixar. Star Wars to create their original content from. Sometimes they're one-offs, sometimes they're full seasons, like The Mandalorian. And as far as the Prime is concerned, they've come out with some good ones, like Jack Reacher. That's been one of their big heavy hitters, and The Boys.
Right.
So they are out there, but they are kind of slower ingratiating themselves with their audience in terms of releasing original content, because I don't think the budget is quite there for them. Disney has thrown lots of money because House of Mouse has got lots of money, but they're not seeing as much favorable returns
Right.
on that content that they're putting out there, and they are scaling back.
It's a good thing you brought up Disney Plus too, because they do put out a lot of content back and forth. They got Echo out right now, right, which we talked about, and then before they had Loki, and then they finished up with Ahsoka. So they've been kind of back and forth on the shows. Now you see them go into their back catalog with their films and such, but with the shows they've been pretty consistent.
Neff, let's go ahead and talk about what this means as far as, since you bring up Disney Plus, do you think that they are going to look more at putting out more of original content on their streaming service, or are they going to focus a little bit more on pushing things to theaters and then backlogging it to their catalog on Disney Plus?
I think they're actually going to continue to focus on shows. The shows are getting expensive, but they're still a little less expensive than the actual movies and the marketing that goes into the movies. And as we talked about before, the only thing that Disney's really putting out, as far as we know, at Marvel, can't speak to Star Wars, haven't heard anything about what they're doing for Star Wars, but it's Deadpool 3. So that's already showing me a regression. They're not putting out as many movies, especially with those big budgets. So I think they are going to focus on the shows more. Like I said, we got Echo out. I don't know what they have lined up afterwards. And it's interesting with Disney because we had the strike or whatever, right? And they had Ahsoka out, and they had, I believe, Loki right after. And I thought that might have been a misstep on their part. But then they had Echo right after the strike ended. So I don't know, maybe if they had Echo sitting in the chamber and they're like, okay, strike's up, put this out there. So I don't know if there's going to be a gap in time where you don't see any shows from Disney. It's January going into February, maybe April. Might be a gap in time where you don't see anything after Echo ends, but I was thinking there might have been a gap after Loki, and there wasn't. So I don't know what they have filmed and what they have in their backlog, but I think they're going to focus more on shows just because it costs less money, slightly less.
Okay, and just to give you guys an idea of what kind of prices we're seeing out there for these streaming services, I did a little research, and we're looking at, most of the big heavy hitters are offering two different options for their subscribers. You can either subscribe to content with ads, which, is definitely going to make it more affordable for more people to have multiple subscription services. And then, of course, there's a more expensive version that doesn't have ads. And some of them have options, too, where it's like better quality video.
Yeah.
So like offering those 4K options for those people who have the 4K television and want to watch everything, in high definition. Or those who are like, it's not as big a deal to me if the quality is a little bit lower because these are older shows or older movies that I'm interested in, and the 4K, they're not even offered in 4K. So the cheapest option for me that I found was like Paramount and Peacock, which run in like $5-6. And this is for, just ad-free even, just, don't even have to worry about it. And then when you get into the more expensive options, you're looking on the end of like $16 to $20. So like, for example, Max falls into like that $16-17 range. Netflix falls into the highest tier out of all of them, which is a $23.
Right.
And that's for the enhanced,
So that's for everything?
That's for everything. That's
Okay.
the enhanced video quality, the multiple users on the, because they cut back on their sharing with the passwords, and we'll discuss that next. But so you can have multiple users on the platform, and then of course you're looking at ad-free content as well. Now, Kage, we'll go to you first. how much would you say you pay for all of your subscriptions?
Oh, we had this
like-
talk. He was like, I don't know.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't even looked at it in a long time.
If you just had to guesstimate then.
I feel like I'm probably maybe at 100, if not a little over.
Okay.
I'm not trying to get the 8K experience on each thing because it really depends on what it is. If I'm watching an animated movie on Crunchyroll and Disney Plus, I don't care if it's not 8K. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I'm watching a sci-fi movie, then I'm gonna want that. But even then, I'm not like must have. But like I like for instance, I don't have ads on anything. That's for me personally. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to sit there and get into a show and then I'm like into a dramatic scene, a scary scene, and then cut to commercial about Almay cosmetics. I'm like, I don't care about that. So I'm going to pay the extra money. I'll pay extra money for not having ads as opposed to quality.
The luxury.
'Cause that's more important to me.
And not to poke the bear here, but seeing as you probably have a better understanding of what it was like growing up with all the ads. When you were first introduced to streaming services and you realized you didn't have to watch ads, and when you're watching this content, how great was that for you?
I was like, where's my credit card? I didn't even hesitate. I was just like, oh, this is a thing. And then, okay, here's a great point. I had Hulu. I actually had it, folks. I had it, and it was $6.99 a month. And I had it for years, and I didn't get rid of it, even though I wasn't crazy about the content. I didn't get rid of it because I'm like, it's $6.99, you know? And then I started seeing more ads pop up. Then they said, oh, we're going to add more ads, and we're going to up our plan to have ads. And I was like, and I'm out. I'm out. That was a deal breaker. So, but to answer your question, yes. When I first made my adult money and I started paying for streaming services, I was like, oh no, ads, absolutely. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even hesitate because if you're less than $60 a month, or I'm like, all right, that's an easy sell.
Okay.
That's an easy sell for me.
And we'll go over next. Neff, how much would you say?
I'm gonna say 45 or less. I know the Paramount for sure with the tax is $760. I think that's pretty good for Paramount for what you get. You get a lot of stuff from Paramount for that price, especially in comparison to Netflix now. I know they raised their prices again, so that's another thing. I don't know so much about Hulu if they raised their prices recently, but you know, it depends. It really depends on what they're putting on, the catalog, the archive that they have in there, what shows they have, what shows they don't have, because that will actually make me go back and look and say, hey, do I need to be paying an extra buck for this streaming service if this other streaming service has more things that I want to watch for the moment? Maybe I'll just tune into Netflix if they put on a show I want to watch. Other than that, I don't need to be spending the $23 a month on redundancy, you know what I mean? So I think that comes into play as well. But I really do like Paramount. Like we said, Hulu, we talked about Alien Romulus, that's going to be on Hulu. We talked about how Prey was on Hulu. Max always has stuff coming out, you know what I mean? Because they're strictly like tied to Warner Brothers. So, you know, what do you have, Kage?
One thing I forgot to mention, I'm paying for YouTube Premium. And that is very underground. I don't think I hear anybody talking about that. It's I feel like it's an untapped resource, so to speak. There's actually movies, for those that don't know, there's actually full-blown movies on YouTube. Now, if you don't have premium, you can still watch those movies, but with ads. YouTube Premium, I'm paying, I think, $14.99 off the top of my head. I could be wrong by a few bucks, but absolutely worth it. I don't see any political ads or anything like that.
Right.
But when I'm watching movies, there are shows. There are actual shows on YouTube. Or if you like old shows from the 90s. I'm an older guy. I like watching Goosebumps or something like that. You can actually go to YouTube, type in a show, like an older show, and chances are you can find it.
And this is why I like Hulu, because I feel like that's where they kind of tap in those older shows. I've watched X-Files on there a bunch of times. It's stuff like that. So I feel like that's where actually Hulu has that balance, and it's really great for them. What do you have, Buttons? What are your numbers looking like?
So for me, I probably fall in that $80 range. I am fortunate enough that it's not coming all out of my pocket. Me and my significant other, we share the cost of those streaming services. And I will say that, because we kind of briefly talked about, whether or not we would want a streaming service purely for if it was the content ad-free or with ads. I know originally when I was younger, wasn't making as much money. I was like, hey, you're going to give me the content that I'm looking for and I just have to watch a couple of ads. It was still usually, at least back in the day, way less ads than if I was watching cable TV or regular TV. And so to me, I was like, this is on demand though. I can just, that's the show I want to watch. If I have to watch a couple of ads, no big deal. But at least it's the content that I'm wanting to view versus clicking through multiple channels trying to find something that's on right now that I want to watch. So that was kind of a no-brainer for me when they first started introducing all these streaming services. But most of the prices, as we mentioned, are going to fall within that $7 all the way up to the $22 range if you want the premium, version of that platform. But what I will say is, I have heard, I don't personally do this, and I'll ask both of you, I've heard of people where they take their subscriptions and they rotate them around. So in order to save money. Now, $80 is a lot of money. You might as well, if we were talking about a decade ago, somebody would have been like, that's what I pay for cable and I get 200 channels, So saying I pay $80 for a couple of streaming sites, and then they're saying, well, why don't you just get cable? That's the argument is, would you consider or do you guys rotate some of these? Because you said, I don't really watch this one as much, or I have it because I just don't think the price is that bad.
Good point.
So would it be something that you either do or see yourself doing in the future where you would swap out some of those to get the content that you want? As you mentioned, Neff, you're looking for what.
Yeah, I kind of pointed out to that when I was just last speaking, but yeah, and it also depends about how much time you have to watch these things. You got to think about it. You have 4 or 5 streaming services. Yeah, it's nice to have 4 or 5 streaming services, but if you're watching a season of a show, how long does it take you to watch a season? When you're watching a season, you're engaged in that. Do you have time to go watch Hulu and watch a series there? It's like a lot of time goes into watching these things. So like you said right now, do I drop Netflix, focus on Hulu real quick? Oh, something came out on Netflix. Hulu's kind of dead right now. Pause that. Go to Netflix just because I'm more focused on that app at that point. I think that makes sense. And it's so funny because even with all these streaming services, and Kage brought up a great piece of info right now, 239 streaming services in America right now.
In just America alone.
Crazy.
I had no idea it was even in the hundreds.
Crazy. But like I was saying, even with those, not all of them, of course, but if you have 4 or 5 streaming services, you're still paying less than cable and probably getting more bang for your buck. So that's another thing to kind of weigh out when you're looking into streaming services, cable, stuff like that.
All right, and Kage, what about you? Would that be something that you see yourself doing maybe in the future or that you do currently, switching between the services?
Honestly, I do keep an eye out online on like shows, movies that are coming out, particularly series, because that's what separates them at the end of the day. I don't rotate stuff, but if something came out on another platform that I'm like really jonesing for, that might influence my decision. I think one thing I want to ask you guys. It depends on what's on there. Okay, so case in point, I don't have Peacock, but you know what? I've heard about Twisted Metal, and I heard it's getting good reviews, and I've seen some clips on YouTube from the show. And as a gamer, I'm like, that looks like, because live adaptations are a gamble, whether it's a show or a movie, video game adaptations of any kind.
We're talking to you, Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I'll touch on that in a moment. But the Twisted Metal, it looks really good. Is that enough to make me jump and get Peacock? No. No.
Makes sense.
I have a rule, okay, and it's the same thing with my gaming consoles. I will not buy a console. I will not buy a service unless there's a minimum of 3 things that I want. I got a PS5. I'm not going to buy it for just one game. You better show me a little bit more of what you're offering before I invest in your product. Same thing with streaming services. I need to, so it's like, okay, Peacock, you showed me Twisted Metal. Show me something else. And that's what's stopping me right now.
And Kage, I think you make a good point, because I have seen ads for different content. Like Apple TV is probably one of those ones where I've gone back and forth over the last couple of years saying, ooh, that show looks really interesting, or that movie looks really good. And then I fall back to, where's it on? Oh, it's on Apple TV. Dang it. Now I can't watch it. And I sit there and go, okay, maybe I should look into the cost of it. Maybe it would be worth it to watch just the content that I want, get what I want out of it, and then drop it. And I know HBO was a big one that a lot of people, they were like, Game of Thrones, and they would drop HBO as soon as Game of Thrones was over.
Yeah, I know a lot of people did that.
And then resubscribe when the new season was coming out. That being said, that was just cable HBO. That wasn't the streaming Max that it is now. But the interesting fact comes down to, with these streaming services, is because there's so many options, out there, what are they going to have to do in order to get the subscribers? Because is it going to be a price point thing? Is it going to be a content thing? Is it going to have to be a combination of both? And I think when we look at things like what happened with Netflix with their password sharing, it goes into, back in the day, Netflix was like, it's fine. We're not going to crack down. We know everybody's sharing their password with each other. And it wasn't a big deal to them, because at the end of the day, I think it was more positive promotion for them. They're like, oh yeah, did you see that show on Netflix? Oh yeah, it was great. Did you watch the new, it came out? Or, oh yeah, they put out that movie. Have you seen it? And I think it was kind of helping them promote to get more people to subscribe on their own, either somebody, kind of like word of mouth. But all of these new streaming services that are out there, now they've got all this competition, and they had to cut back on that password sharing. And Neff, I know you looked into some information in regards to what happened with Netflix and their password sharing, so I'm going to pass it off to you.
Yeah, I think they said they were going to crack down on it. I've yet to see if that's actually happened, but have they done that, Kage? You got anything about that?
I'm going to share a little personal experience, and I don't know if anyone out there has seen that. So
This is recently, right?
yeah, actually.
Okay.
Actually, last week. So myself, like many of us here, everybody shared passwords or had a password shared with them, particularly college students, I would say, are the biggest offenders, if you want to call it that. I'm not going after anybody. Like I said, we all do it. Who cares? But that's just my personal. Yeah, looking at you, we are throwing some mad shade at Netflix.
Yeah.
But I've had experiences where just recently I have family sharing stuff with me, and I'm sharing stuff with them, and I'll go to log in, and it'll be like, hey, we have updated the thing. And I called my relative and I said, yeah, I think we're done. I think they caught on. I can't use your Hulu anymore, or I can't use your whatever service, anymore. Hang in there now.
Like a breakup.
Oh, man.
I think it's over.
I think it's
No. He's my family man. but like, it's like, Mom, or they caught on, you know what I mean? So we're gonna have to or I've had to call my friends and family and be like, hey, I got a warning that they caught on, and I can't share my password anymore, or I'm gonna lose my account. I've seen pop-ups.
So they have cracked down.
They have cracked down. So the first time that happened with me was with Hulu, and that was years ago. I got a pop-up message telling me, hey, you need to get your own subscription. Disney Plus did something to me very recently. I am sharing that with someone, with a family member, who is going through a hard time dealing with cancer. Okay, I won't go too deep into my personal, but like obviously money is an issue for somebody dealing with cancer, and so that was me helping out. Well, I logged on to my Disney Plus, and I got a pop-up message from Disney saying, "Hey, your account, we can't log into it." And I tried to forget password, and I got a new pop-up telling me you need to make a new password for your account. And then it goes, "Oh, you need to add a digital PIN also. You have to do this stuff." And then when that PIN, if you call your family, your friend, and you say, "Hey, by the way, I just changed my password on Tuesday, and this is what the PIN is," I get a notification within 48 hours saying, "Hey, this PIN was used in another state. We want you to change your PIN." They're catching on, folks. So just putting that out there, folks, be careful. They are cracking down. It may not be a big CNN article, but they are doing it.
Good info.
They are doing it. So that's just some personal.
You seen
stuff
anything
for me.
like that, Buttons, recently?
So for me, again, we use the content only within our house.
Right.
So I think me personally, I only think I ever shared my Netflix password, and this was way back in the day. And so no, I've never personally seen. Now I do know Disney Plus logs me out more than any of the other subscription services. So
An activity issue?
I don't know if it's an activity issue or if it's more just like Kage mentioned, maybe they're trying to run some updates, or maybe they're just trying to check your account and make sure that you aren't sharing it with other people.
Right.
And so, by the easiest way to do that is to boot you out and make you re-log in, because most people, they forget their passwords and then they reset, and then that could be the easiest way to bump other people off those networks. Now, one of the funniest things that I have noticed in the last probably 5 or so years is all of those, and it only made me think of this because Neff brought up the whole sounded like you broke up with a relationship, is when you have these shared passwords on these streaming services. And I kind of joke about this because, back when they first came out, there was one profile and everybody used the profile. And then they came up with, hey, this algorithm is going to give you suggestions based off of what you watch. So you're better off setting up multiple profiles so that you don't log into your, subscription service and it's like, hey,
Mess up the logarithm for someone else.
yeah. And it's like, hey, well, my mom is using this subscription service too, and she loves rom-coms. So every time I log in and I like horror movies, all I get are suggestions for rom-coms. And so, one of the funny things that I saw is all like, hey, yeah, I broke up with my significant other and they locked me out of Netflix. Oh man, she did you dirty, It's like, oh man, she changed the Netflix password.
She crossed the line.
Exactly. Like, what a B move, Like,
Just something funny to add on to that. I recently went to go spend Christmas with my family, and it was really funny because they have streaming services, and you're not using their account. You're in their place, you know what I mean? But it's funny you talk about that because you're absolutely right. Logarithms are important, people. And so, I have family members that are into romances or whatever, and then here comes dark me wanting to watch horror movie. And
messing up their algorithm.
Messing up the algorithm, and they log in.
Saw 3.
And yeah. Because think about it. You're into comedies, you're into rom-coms or whatever, and you're used to seeing all these tiles in front of you, showing the hundreds of shows, rom-com movies or whatever, and all of a sudden there's a severed foot on the floor. It says Saw, and you're like, oh my God, you're horrified. Now, me, a horror aficionado, I'm used to seeing screwed up covers of movies, whatever. Mom, sorry, Mom.
Not so much.
Not so much. Why do you watch this stuff? And like, I'm not laughing at my mom. I'm laughing at the situation. I'm like, I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry.
And I think, one of the good things that they streaming platforms did do was allow these multiple profiles to exist, because
Right.
It has become a family thing, and a lot of them introduced these child protected, child lock,
Yes.
things on these profiles, so your kid doesn't stumble across like, oh, I was looking for Coco Chameleon and I ran across Saw 3, and now they won't go to sleep because they're afraid
That
of,
kid's gonna learn today.
and back in the, that's why we had child locks on cable, they did that for the same reason. Now back in the day, they didn't have child locks when I was a kid, so.
Pay-per-view.
Well, I mean, pay-per-view, but I just mean, like, if there was a horror movie that was put on television, we watched the horror movie. We watched shows like It and Rose Red and, Overdrive and all these other movies that would make you terrified to just go to the bathroom. He was like, thank you, Stephen King, for, all the nightmares. Right. But, these streaming services having the different profiles makes it a little bit easier for those algorithms to go into play. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, it's wonderful because, a lot of the original content on Netflix specifically that I've watched over the years is because, hey, we saw that you liked this, and here's a suggestion, and they'll throw some original content out there. And I won't go too far into that, but I think that is one of the better things that they've done with the platforms over
Agreed.
in recent.
Makes
years.
sense.
There's something I kind of wanted to ask you guys, and I know we could really go off on it, so I'll try to maintain some control here. With your streaming services, what are your favorite things to watch? Just spitball things. So, like, for instance, okay, let me go down the line, and this isn't everything, mind you. So I said for Max, The Last of Us is a big one. Whether you're a gamer or not, it is a great show. All the episodes are reviewed 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10. It's a fantastic show, even if you don't know anything about the game, which is a 10 out of 10 and stuff. Literally, every Last of Us game gets great reviews. But that is a fantastic show, fantastic drama. If you're into the post-apocalyptic thing, it definitely gets that vein. The Warrior, as Neff mentioned, I love The Warrior. So for anyone that doesn't know, Warrior is just about their stories written by Bruce Lee. I think I talked about this briefly in the Mortal Kombat episode that we did way back. They hire actors that actually have martial arts experience. So the fighting you're seeing is not a stunt guy. It's actually these people. Right. They found people that can act and fight. It's a great show. I recently found out that it was canceled, and that breaks my heart. It is 3 seasons, but it is canceled on Max because it's moving to Netflix in 2024.
Wow.
So for anyone out there who has ever heard of Warrior or curious about what I'm telling now, free plug, you're welcome. The studio who made Warrior, it's a fantastic show. It is coming to Netflix, so keep an eye out for that, ladies and gentlemen. As far as Netflix, Netflix is the king of series, okay, of one-season shows and stuff like that. So for shows, I said Squid Game, I said Cyberpunk, I said Stranger Things, The Witcher. There's another one that I haven't seen, the Blue Eye Samurai. It's an anime. I think it's an anime series. I heard really good reviews, so I'm definitely going to check that out. Amazon Prime, not a lot of series. The one thing that gets my attention, The Boys. The Boys is hilarious. Great action, great CG. It's a good time, okay? Disney Plus, I know there's a lot of Disney, Star Wars, Marvel shows out there. But for me, I'd say Mandalorian Season 1 and 2. And again, that's the one I watched the least. I was really invested, and then Season 3, I feel like they kind of dropped the ball. What are you doing, Disney? Why would you do that? But those are my favorites But what are your favorites the ones that you have? And do you have? And actually, in the open question too, Are there any series that you would like to see on your platforms?
Interesting. So I don't really watch shows much, honestly. I don't have so much time to watch those. I'm usually more into just the movies. So if there's like an interesting movie that comes on there, like Extraction 2, that was one that I watched that I liked a lot. But like I said, I'm interested in this Penguin series that they have with HBO Max. Or Max, I should
Thank you for
say. So
reminding me.
that's one. Like I said, Extraction 2, that was on Netflix. I watched the Haunting on Hill House series and Bly Manor and stuff like that, but I think they discontinued that. Me and Buttons have talked about Marianne, which is discontinued. Archive 81 discontinued, and those are shows. As far as Hulu goes, like I said, Hulu, that's one thing where I'm actually going back and watching stuff from the 90s. I don't know if Hulu does so much, I guess I'd say original show-based content. I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. I see a lot of things like Family Guy, Futurama, stuff like that, so older stuff. So I go to that for, like, if I want to go watch X-Files or something like that, maybe something else from, like, the 90s, I'll watch that. I know I did watch, I think it was a year and a half ago when they did the new Hellraiser movie. I watched that on Hulu. So once again, another movie. As far as Paramount, same thing. Paramount really just grabs things that are already in theater. So I know Top Gun was on there. They'll throw on some retro movies. Like they had Top Gun 1 on there before. They put 2 on there. They had all the Mission Impossibles on there. So stuff like that.
Okay.
But as far as like original shows, I don't really watch too much of that on those streaming platforms. Buttons?
So for me, I gotta say, having had Netflix for years and years, all the way back to the beginning when I was getting the DVDs in the mail, I do probably get more original content out of Netflix, and I do like over the years, and this again might be because of the algorithms, it might be because they just realize they have an international, base of subscribers that would enjoy the same content. I get my Korean soaps. I love me a good K-pop drama. And, I will say that Netflix and probably Hulu, Prime is doing pretty good about bringing in some more international shows and movies as well. But those are my 3 that, I get most of my content out of. And I would say I probably focus more on the TV shows with those streaming services. Disney Plus, though, that's movies for me. That's my childhood right there. And I do like the new movies that have come out too. I mean, call me a nerd or whatever, but there's something that Disney has in their formula that just I can watch a movie, I can laugh, I can cry, and just have a good old time watching, something from the old, catalog going back to my childhood, or something from the newer releases, and still have that same magic that Disney just happens to bring to their content.
I agree with that 100%.
So, when I'm going to Disney Plus, I'm usually going there for a movie. I enjoyed Loki. I enjoyed WandaVision. So I probably would say that I probably enjoyed obviously more of the Marvel content as far as their original content goes. My boyfriend would say more of the Star Wars, but unfortunately it's not the new stuff that they put out on streaming other than Mandalorian. It's actually their back catalog, like Clone Wars and the what was the series with the Ahsoka that was based off of, was that Clone Wars too? I think that was Clone Wars, right? That's where she was introduced, her character. Forgive me, people who are the Star Wars fans. I am I do not know all the Star Wars information. Forgive me. I am in the process of being converted.
Calm down, Neff. Calm down. He's tweaking, folks. No, I'm kidding.
But I mean, as far as the Bad Batch was the other one.
Right.
Okay, so the Bad Batch.
The other animated series.
So they have some animated Star Wars material on there that everybody still those were highly rated. Just like how Nickelodeon put out The Last Airbender, and everybody loved that of all age range. So for me, it's not just Crunchyroll. you know, it's content that works for a multitude of age ranges. Crunchyroll tends to fall within a certain age range audience, as far as who's subscribing to it. The content in there obviously is going to be varied, and it's going to have everything all the way down from like people where you can watch, you know, have for small children things like Pokemon and Cardcaptor Sakura, all the way up to the more serious ones like Code Geass and
I mean, there's a lot of like adult
Evangelion
ones, yeah.
and you know all, you know, I don't know, and everywhere in between. But I will say that that is what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for something that, not to say I don't watch movies. I do like some of the original movies that are out there, but for the most part, those movies, because I don't have Max, so I'm usually not seeing the brand new stuff. I'm seeing stuff that's, when they finally make it to streaming, it's already been more than a year that it's been out. So if I didn't see it in theaters and it pops up, I might watch it on streaming.
Now, one thing that really speaks to me, or like gets my attention out of the streaming services I have, is during the pandemic, Max was a rock star, or HBO as it was called at the time. Me and Neff, we are big fans of Dune, and during the pandemic, this huge movie came out, and there was a lot of talk in the movie world how this movie was going to do, how this movie was going to be affected by the lack of theaters. So Max was like, hey, we're going to put this movie that's out right now in theaters, we're going to put it at home, which that was a big deal. So because of that, that kind of stuck in my mind when I think about streaming services. If I ever think about getting rid of one, I won't get rid of Max, because I'll remember that one time in 2020 when they stepped up Mortal Kombat, Dune. I saw both of those when I couldn't go to the theaters, when the theaters were closed. I was at home on my couch. And then Dune is probably the only movie I can say that I watched on stream, and then when the theaters opened, I went to the theater to go see it, because folks, Dune, IMAX, if you had an opportunity to see that on the big screen in IMAX, respect. It was a fantastic experience.
And one of our most anticipated of this
Sequel,
year.
yes, absolutely. So I mean, that when I think about my streaming services, I think about what can they do for me, what have they done for me, and that right there is what will always stay in my mind, is Max stepping up and saying, hey, we know everybody's locked in, and we know everybody wants to see these movies, but we're going to bring it home to you.
Nice. Anybody got anything else to share?
No, I think that's probably going to cover most of what we've.
I think we hit a lot of topics
Yeah,
there, and a
we-
lot of
Yeah.
streaming services that people have. I think it'd
Yes.
be really relatable
Yeah,
for people.
and everyone out there, just please share with us, what streaming services are you using? What shows are you like? What shows are you looking forward to?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, you know, everyone here, we'd love to see all your comments, and love to see, you know, share with us what your thoughts are, and anything that you think we may have missed. Go ahead and fill us in.